Today, the session we're covering is uh, create accessible learning content. It's specifically in Canvas content that we're gearing this session towards, and we're hoping that it'll be a very small yet engaging group. We have 10 tips for you. We've done this session before, but Canvas has updated a few things in the past, so we figured might as well do it with a few the few new updates that it had. We'll introduce ourselves. My name is Khaled Musa. I use he, him pronouns. I am an academic technologist focused on accessibility with academic technology support services. We're a team of passionate academic technologists and instruction designers that works directly with faculty and other academic technologists around the university. We support the university centrally. If you want to reach me specifically, my email is on the screen, kmusa@umn.edu, but you can also reach our team at atss@umn.edu.
And I'm Christina Sibuzar, and I realize this looks super weird. I just started a new position as an evaluation specialist over an extension, but I used to work in the College of Liberal Arts as an academic technologist. Also very passionate about accessibility, doing my PhD dissertation on accessibility policy, inclusive education. But you also are more than welcome to reach out to me. Colette is with Central OIT, so his shop's probably your first stop for support over me, but I am still happy to answer any questions if you want to reach out to me at any time.
Christina has been an amazing partner with me. I've been at the university since 2019, and it's been a great journey so far. We've been partners for a while on accessibility projects. So we'll start with accessibility and what it means. There is a definition for it out there for the higher education institution like ours. A person with a disability should have the opportunity to acquire the same information and engage in the same interactions and enjoy the same services. And this is the most important part, as a person without a disability in a equal manner. The equal, we're going to stress the equal part. Equal means the same time as the other students, the same, if they're in the class, they have to be able to access the information at the same time as their peers. And we'll talk about what it means, what the difference is between having accessible information and accommodation requests.
I feel kind of like nobody sometimes. I'm a person just like anyone else, and I feel like I should be treated like a person. My name is Lisa Kidder. I'm a political science major at the University of Minnesota, and I'm totally blind. I face barriers that have to deal with access to information. If printed material is not available in electronic copy, such as a Word or PDF document, I can feel like it's a separate and unequal education. If I don't have readings in time for a class, I might need to talk to the instructor and ask for an extension, or I need to find someone who can read the material to me and take notes on it. It wears down on my self-esteem once in a while, just because I've experienced it so much, and I feel like I'm always the one educating others.
So we wanted you to hear it from a student who've experienced that at the university, and there are many other stories like that. I'm curious what statements stood out for you, and again, feel free to put it in the chat. There are two sentences that every time I listen to this video kind of help. They do hurt a few times. So if you have anything, feel free to chime in. I'm just curious to know what stood out for you in that video. Christina, you and I have the same one.
Yeah, I can share. Sorry, that was me accidentally hitting next on the slides and
No
then hitting
worries.
back. So I promise I know how to do remote control stuff. For me, it's really the separate and unequal education. That was really, really hard to hear. This student was in CLA right before I started working in CLA in 2019, and to hear that this was something that was currently happening while I was, or right before I started in CLA was really, really hard for me. So we see some stuff in the chat. Jennifer says that the student feels invisible most of the time. Maggie says the repeated need to ask for access, eroding self-esteem. So these are all really great. Well, they're not great. Obviously, these are terrible things the student experienced, but it's important to note. So go ahead.
Can I say that with my voice?
Yes.
Okay, I'm really lazy to type everything, but I think it was about 1 year or 2 years ago when I had a student with the same situation. In the conversion, even if I submitted the materials 2 weeks in advance, they were not transcribed. So I made myself that person to read for the student and to work in a group with the student. But I could see firsthand the challenge that comes with us as instructors not being proactive, or sometimes the DRC.
Yep. No, these are great points, which sounds like you read our slides before we uh, there's one more comment.
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, no, that I love it. So having to educate others, erode self-esteem, that's all they're all great points. And as a person with a disability myself, I went through my bachelor degree the same way, and it's hard to wait for somebody to do the information, to get the information for you, when you know if you had it accessible you could have done it yourself. And I want to stress the accessible part, right? There are, and we'll talk about the difference between accessibility and accommodation next. So you've mentioned it a few from your observation and listening to the video. Christina, do you mind starting the automated captioning? Sorry.
It said it was on for me already.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So we
Well,
have to do the accommodation and accessibility are distinct. They're different. No, sometimes we look at them as the same, or one is in lieu of the other. They don't replace each other. So accessibility is a proactive approach, and it was mentioned that you need to be proactive as a faculty member to think ahead of what your students might need. And it is hard to be proactive, especially when you have a lot of content that you do share in class. Accommodation is a reactive approach. You're waiting for a student to declare to you that they have a disability and disclose that they need a certain accommodation. Sometimes they know what that specific accommodation is. Sometimes they're still trying to figure it out because it depends on the material, it depends on the content that's being shared. In certain cases like captioning, ESL interpreting, it's straightforward. The person needs it. You reach out to the DRC will provide it. Sometimes if you don't reach out to the DRC in time, there's a delay and you'll get it a couple of weeks later. It's not a fault of any system or any entity. It's just the nature of the process. You submit the request, it doesn't happen on demand. Accessibility is a process where you have to think ahead and be responsible for your own content. Whereas accommodation, you're relying on the student to actually engage with you. So we want accessibility to be more of a proactive approach, and the faculty taking ownership of their content and making sure they are thinking ahead and being proactive about it. So when I say the onus is on the student, there is a legal requirement that in order for a student to receive services from the DRC, they have to be legally they have to submit medical documentation to prove their disability. Usually a letter from a doctor, a letter from a caseworker, and they have to know what accommodation they need. Whereas accessibility relies on the social model of disability, and if you're not sure what that is, that the social model of disability is opposite to the medical approach, where you're relying on the person to disclose and let you know that they have a disability and prove to you that they have a disability. And the same thing as the legal medical model. The social model says people are disabled because I am disabling them, or the environment expectation. And I'm part of that environment where I'm providing information to my students that is not accessible. Therefore, I am perpetuating that their disability. So it's a person-centered approach, saying I am the person is responsible for the content. The university is committed to making sure our central available resources are accessible. When we say that, we are providing tools that are accessible, we test them for accessibility. If we figure out something is not accessible, we report to the vendor that it's not accessible. Zoom, Canvas, Kaltura are some of the examples that we are in constant communication with the vendors to make sure if we discover any inaccessibility in the tool, we report it to them, they fix it. The DRC is the largest disability resource center in the country at the University of Minnesota, and we do provide services for about 4,500 students every semester. That's a lot of students, a lot, and it doesn't matter how much staff you provide, there's always going to be a lag. So, and with our tools, we make sure, again, everything is accessible. So, but there's a responsibility on the faculty side or the editor's side, the course designer side, that if you add content, it doesn't matter how accessible the tool is, you add inaccessible content, it renders that tool inaccessible. So when Canvas, if you add text on a page and you don't check the color contrast of it, then even though the Canvas itself is accessible, you just made the material, the content that you added into it, inaccessible. Same thing if you add a PDF to a Canvas course, you make, if that PDF is not accessible, you made your course inaccessible, even though the software is accessible. We do have resources for faculty. We, in 2019 and 20, we created the Digital Accessibility Badging Series. So that's z.umn.edu/DA badging, one word. Those are courses that consist of specific skills, and you can earn a badge at the end where you can learn digital accessibility in documents, courses. There's a foundation course, a digital accessibility foundation course that talks a little bit about the requirements and gives you a few examples. Slides, presentations, there's websites if you do websites. So it's you can do any combination of the above. So we encourage you to do it. We also revamped our Accessible U website, so accessibility.umn.edu, with a lot of examples about some of the things we'll be talking about, and those are specifically the 7 core skills. If you've never heard of the 7 core skills, they are the alt text, color contrast, bulleted and numbered lists, links, captioning, and tables. So those have specific skills that you can and specific techniques that you can follow in order to make your content accessible. And we'll give you a few examples of those on Canvas next. So we'll start with the top 10 tips we think you should do in your Canvas courses, and I'll hand it off to Christina from here.
Yeah, so this tip might seem a little silly and basic, but the first tip is about the homepage, and that tip is to have one. Actually have a homepage on your Canvas site. It's very helpful to have something that's a little bit less, so like if you have modules, module view is generally the default homepage in Canvas. That just throws students right into the content, right? There's no welcoming space. There's no easy way to find the most critical information right away, even if you have a really well-structured module setup, which we'll talk about later. But having a homepage creates a space for students to land. They'll be able to easily differentiate which course is which by looking at it. So we really recommend having an explicit dedicated homepage on your Canvas site. So what should be on that page? Course material links. So links to the syllabus, if you have a resource module, if you have a specific resource like a digital textbook that students are going to need to access over and over and over again, put those up at the top as well. Then we should have instructor information. So obviously who the instructor is, if that's you, if it's a TA, how to get in touch with those instructors, how to connect with them via email. I assume most of us don't put our phone number out there anymore, but if instructors want to have their phone number out there, that's fine. And then also another one that I recommend a lot is office hours. So anything you'd put in the syllabus about office hours, if it's by appointment only, if it's on Zoom, if it's in person, if it's just drop in anytime, put that on the homepage as well. That saves students a couple of clicks. And I think most of us know students tend to not go back to the syllabus after that first or second week. So making sure that information is easily accessible on the homepage provides a lot of clarity and reduces questions for instructors as well. And then we strongly recommend including links to the organizational structure for the course. So if you organize your course by week, so week 1, week 2, week 3 content, or thematically by unit, that's also great. Just having links to those modules or pages that relate to that content. Because then students don't have to dig around in the site to find things. It gives them additional access. I think Colette will talk next about left navigation, but giving students multiple paths to access that content is really important. And then finally, our last tip is include some information about accessibility or the DRC sort of at the bottom of that homepage. That sort of signals to students that you're open to a conversation. If they have an accommodations letter, it creates sort of safe space for them to come to you and work with you on any accommodations they might need. A lot of students will not disclose that they have an accommodation letter, right? They won't do it unless they have to. And this takes away some of that pressure and makes them feel more confident that you'll work with them. So now this is an image of a homepage. This is the old CLA template. The new one is almost identical. If you work in CLA and you see this, that's fine. But you can see here we have sort of a decorative banner here. We'll talk about alt text and another tip, but it just sort of creates a visual indicator of this is this particular course, the CNES course on classical epic in translation. And then you can see in the course materials, we've got the syllabus, some course information, writing help, and links and resources. These bottom 3 are all modules, whereas this top one links directly to a Google Doc for the syllabus. And then we've got the instructor's name and email and office. At this point, Professor Krevins hadn't had office hours decided yet, but obviously when you publish a course for students, you want to have that information. And then you can see the course schedule here is by week. And so the instructor just linked to the weekly, this course used pages, weekly pages. And so that allowed students to directly get right to those pages. So that's the homepage. So now our next tip is left navigation. Oh, Colette, you're muted.
Before we move to the second tip, there is an accessible syllabus session later with accessibility ambassadors. If you would like to join, you can visit the group at z.umn.edu/A11Y-group. We encourage you to become a member of that accessibility ambassadors group and join the session about the accessible syllabus today. So with the second tip, we're talking about left navigation best practices. Left navigation is all about keeping it simple. Try to only include anything in the left navigation that you want students to see. By default, you have a lot of options and you have the choice to adjust those options. So you can add and remove things you need in the course. So if you want students to look at pages from the left navigation, you enable it. if you want students to view all quizzes and assignments and things like that, if that's your cadence in the course, you can show it. We recommend that you show students what they need in the time they need it, especially if they have a lot of courses signed up. You don't want them trying to figure out what your method of navigation in the course by looking at your left nav. I think the homepage is a great entry point. You give them the schedule of the course and what you want them to do in any given week or section. One thing we cannot recommend enough is never have the file section show in the left navigation. The file section is very confusing to begin with. If you want students to access any files, it should never be from the left navigation. It should be in the actual page that you want them to view it, in the actual week, in the actual assignment, wherever it's needed, that's where you link to it. But students should not have to hunt for files in your file section. There's a lot of things in the file section, usually all the images in your course, all the documents, previous and current, a lot of things that get migrated over. When you upload something, you sometimes get attached. There's a lot of files, so please don't show it if possible. And before we go to tip number 3, sometimes some faculty add their quiz answers in the file section. If you have it enabled, students might be able to access it. So please don't do that.
That was exactly what I was going to say. I worked with an instructor a couple of years ago who had all of his exams in the file section, had that open, all the students found it, and they found the answer keys. And this was a final exam, so he did not have any time to fix it. And that was a rough conversation. So just for your own peace of mind, or any instructors you work with, if you're not an instructor, just keep that files tab hidden. So our next tip is module view. So in Canvas, modules are think of modules as like a bookshelf, right? They're just sort of containers where you can put different things on them and you can organize them however you'd like. So when you are putting things in that bookshelf or in modules, you really want to think about the student perspective. Normally, I shouldn't say normally, a lot of instructors, when they first start using Canvas, start grouping things by content type. So students have these readings, they have in one module, they have assignments in another module, they have quizzes in another module, and they have weekly pages or whatever, Canvas embedded content in there. And that might make a lot of sense for an instructor because you know exactly what piece of information goes with what week and how to get to it. But students don't. Students don't know how to connect those dots between those different modules. So we really recommend that all the modules be a mix of all the content based on either the weekly schedule that you're using or a thematic schedule that you're using. So all the content for week 1 goes in a week 1 module. And to help organize that module, we recommend having an introductory page that says something like, in this module, we will cover XYZ topics. We'll do whatever context you want to add. Pages provide a great opportunity for you to give a little bit more explanation to students of what's happening. And then to provide links of all the content in the module so they can access it both from module view and then from that page. And then we recommend that all of the due dates and point values be put on everything that's in the module that students have to actively turn in. So that way it shows up on their to-do list. They can see it at a glance in the module view. This is really just a best practice in general, having due dates and point values on there. And then we also recommend having a concluding page to each module, which should just be a mirror of the introductory page, except instead of saying in this module we will, you would say in this module we have completed the following items or whatever. So that way students can double check that they've done everything, they're not missing anything. Because in modules, there's that previous and next button at the bottom of every page that's in a module, and it will just take you right to the next module. So a student could go from the last page of one module right to the introductory page of a next module and wonder if they're missing anything, if there's not that little concluding page. And then the only other thing we recommend, and this tip is going to come up repeatedly as well, is make sure that all of your items are consistently named. This is a big one for just making sure students understand if you're going to call something quiz 1 - title or whatever, don't do title - quiz 2 next. keep it consistent, keep it clear, always refer to a reading the same way across multiple pages and in various parts if you put it in the modules in multiple places. And we'll have more examples of that later on.
That tip was very packed. It had a lot of information that we could have even made its own tips. The due dates is one of the biggest things we hear about from students, that faculty do not add enough due dates. In these assignments, or a lot of assignments are missing due dates. Please add due dates for all of your assignments, all of your quizzes, as much as you can. The second one,
can I just pop in really quick too?
Yeah.
With that, put due dates in even if students aren't turning something in Canvas. If it's an in-person assignment that they're turning in, still put that due date on there so students see it in Canvas. If they have an assignment due.
so we have a campaign right now to see if we put the word out about due dates as much as we can, if we can make a big difference, because we keep hearing from students again and again, I lost an assignment or I missed an assignment because it didn't have a due date on it. And the second one is linear navigation versus exploratory navigation. The modules talk about kind of give you, students love, there's a good mix of students between who love to go linear navigation. Christina and I are biggest examples of that. I'm a linear navigation. I want to make sure I click next in Canvas. If you don't do modules, students will not get to see that next in every page. Exploratory navigation is allowing students to go to the material that they need and jump to it right away. Every student is different. Just keep that in mind. Module navigation allows for both. If you do exploratory, you're missing a good chunk of the student who do love the linear navigation. And with that, we'll go to tip number 4. Heading structure is such a critical underutilized skill, or overutilized for when you use styles. And what I mean by that is you need to use structure. Use the heading structure. It's called blocks in the RCE. Make sure you order it from 2 to 4. It's a nested heading. Canvas gives you a level 1 by default. So each content should be a title of what is going to come in the paragraph after it. Chunk the text. That's good for people with old people who access your content. If you read a newspaper, the heading, the titles of all the articles in the newspaper, those are the headings. If you read a book, it's the chapters. So the title of the book is a number 1, and that's the one Canvas provides for you. 2 is chapters, 3 is sub-chapters, 4 is a sub of 3. So they're nested. 3 is a sub of 2, 2 is of 1. When you chunk it, make sure the titles are succinct and unique. They give a title to the paragraph or that chapter. And it gives students who use screen readers a good place to jump to. It gives students with a learning disability an ability to scan. It gives students who don't have a disability the ability to kind of skim read and jump to the content they need. Typically, we're asking for any page above 1,500 characters, and we don't want you to go count your pages. I'd rather you have it than not. But if you absolutely must, any content in a page that above 1,500 characters should have heading structure. And the reason I say that is because we have a tool in Canvas that scans your courses, and if it notices any page above 1,500 characters and does not have heading structure, it will ask you to add some. You might make things look bold and italicized and in large font that look like heading, but those are not headings. You actually have to use the blocks in Canvas, the block styles, to change it to heading 2 or 3 or 4. Yeah, don't make it just visual. And before I go to the next slide will show you a person accessing a Canvas page with a screen reader to show you the difference.
Here's where you can access the Styles menu in Canvas. It is usually located in the Rich Content Editor between the Font Size menu and the Accessibility checker. When you select that menu, you will see headings 2, 3, and 4. Let me show you how a Canvas page sounds when headings have not been added. If I press H on this page, I only get the title, which Canvas adds by default as heading 1.
Demo page for headers video bad heading level 1 clickable. No more headings at level 2 in this section. No more headings at level 3 in this section. No more headings at level 4 in this section.
Notice that visually there are other lines on the page that stand out more, but the screen reader does not distinguish between them because the headings are not correctly marked. Now let me show you the same page but with the headings added the right way.
Demo page for headers video good heading level 1 clickable. Start here how to use this course site heading level 2 clickable. Workshop format heading level 3 clickable. Course site format heading level 3 clickable. Introduction page heading level 4 clickable. Learn it clickable heading level 4. Try it clickable heading level 4. Takeaways page clickable heading level 4. Communication heading level 3 clickable.
All types of headings used in Canvas are present on this page. That time the screen reader was able to tell me where the different sections of the page began. That helped me scan the content quickly and efficiently.
Any questions so far up until this point? Feel free to add them in the chat or unmute.
All right, this next one is images and alt text. This can be really challenging for many people. There's some key guidelines that we'll have for this, but I will say we do have Accessibility Ambassadors has a presentation on this. This is one that we get a lot of questions about. So some alt text best practices include making sure that you are conveying the essential information that image is conveying in text. So that way anyone who reads or who is looking at that image using a screen reader is able to catch that same context that you're trying to have sighted users understand. So if you've got a decorative image, that's an image that isn't really adding anything to the content or context of the page. It's just there to look pretty, to make your site different or whatever. We really recommend you question why you're using a decorative image. If you have it, like, what's the purpose of it? Why is it there? Who is it helping? If it's just there to be some sort of pretty visual divider or whatever, there are better, more accessible ways to do that. So we also recommend that you don't use the words image or graphic in your alt text because a screen reader is going to indicate that it's an image already. So that's just redundant. You end up wasting characters. There's a pretty limited amount of characters Canvas wants you to use. They try to ask you to keep it under 150 characters. So you need to be succinct when you write this. If you're finding that you are, let's say you're an art history instructor and you've got an image on the screen and you're really struggling because there's a whole bunch of stuff you want to point out to your students about what's happening in the painting, consider, instead of have a little bit of alt text with the painting information, just sort of a basic description, but then you'd also potentially want to have all of that information that you'd put in a screen or in the alt text for a screen reader user into a paragraph below the image, because then all students would benefit from having that additional context being pointed out to them. This is a great way to get around having the 150 characters limit. So Canvas isn't going to stop you, if I'm correct, Khaled, tell me if I'm not, from having longer alt text, but the accessibility checker that we'll talk about at the end will flag this as a problem. So just really think about the ways in which you are trying to convey that information. And if it's too long, put it in a paragraph below because it will benefit all students, not just students using screen readers. And so this is a slightly blurry, it looks like, so I apologize for that. Quick demo of how you would add alt text to an image in Canvas. So this is just a home page that we have. So you'd want to click on Edit. And then this image already exists in there, but you could just paste an image. Then you want to click on Image Options. And then right there at the top, you can see I have highlighted here. This is where the alt text goes. So we have the UMN logo, Driven to Discover. So you can see that it's, we've got the big M on the image, and then it says University of Minnesota. So it doesn't have to be a one-to-one for University of Minnesota and UMN logo, that's fine. But then the Driven to Discover is the important part of that. You can see right below that alt text box, there's a check mark for decorative image. So Canvas does allow you to have that if you truly, truly want it. We still recommend you don't have them. And then I would not mess with any of these other items down here. And then down at the very bottom corner, you can't really see it very well, but there is a done box in blue there, done button, click that. And then it is all set. And Canvas has saved your alt text. And then you'll want to make sure you save the page. Do not hit cancel, that will not save any changes. But that is how you easily add alt text to images in Pages. And now, come on. There we go. This is a very, I don't want to say it's complicated, it is complicated, but it's also like emotionally overwhelming to look at sometimes, alt text decision tree. But really, this is just a tool to help sort of guide you into when you should use alt text, when it would be a decorative image. So does this image have text? Is that text present in real text nearby? So like a paragraph below, then you don't need to use alt text because you're already conveying that information in a separate place. Same thing if it is used for visual affect only. But if the text is not present somewhere else, then you need to include alt text. If the text has a specific function, you want to make sure that you describe that function in the alt text. Is this image used as a link or a button? Don't do this. Like, this feels like very early 2000s GeoCities sites. Don't use buttons if you can avoid it. Like, or images as buttons, just use links. But you need to, if you do use a button, you need to have alt text describing where that link takes you so people know what they're clicking on. And then this is sort of what I was talking about. Does the image contribute to the context of the page? If yes, you need to have alt text to explain what's going on in that image. If it's redundant to the text, so like that paragraph below the image, that could be a decorative image then if you want. I still recommend having a little bit of alt text on there so people know what the image is. And then, like we said, if the image is purely decorative, then use a decorative image tag in Canvas. So this one feels really overwhelming to a lot of people. And my best recommendation is just do your best. It's okay if it's not perfect. No one is perfect at this. I certainly am not perfect at this. And this is also one that really, like Claude and I help a lot of instructors do accessible work, and we remediate a lot of accessibility errors, but this is one that we need to work with faculty directly on because we don't know what's important in that image to you and what you want that to tell students. So you need to think about that when you are adding images to your course.
Well said. So next we're going to talk about color contrast, and color contrast is one of those things that is, I want to say, sort of easier to do. There's a lot of tools, and we'll share one of them that can help you. There's plenty of tools in Canvas. So Canvas has a built-in accessibility checker that you can use for your color contrast. We have the You Do It tool that is available to all instructors. But there's a plethora of tools on the web that can help you do your color contrast. And we're looking for normal text that's a 11-12 point font to be 4.5:1 contrast ratio. A heading structure that's anything above 16 point font or larger can be a 3:1. If you make it bolder, same thing. The higher the contrast, the better. A better contrast for all students would be 7.5:1. And that's the AAA guidelines for the web content access guidelines. So if you want to go above and beyond, do 7 and higher. Color should be, it applies to images and charts as well. So if you use charts, I know we tend to do a lot of red and green together for a pie chart, for example. Those don't pass when you put them next to each other. So try to, or the third one is don't use color alone to signify something that is important. Use other things that help add to color, because not everything is about students who are visually impaired or low vision. A lot of students or staff or faculty even could be colorblind, and they might not notice that color that you're trying to signify an important we notice in a lot of our remediation, a lot of red for missing items, a lot of red for signifying importance, and red on the Canvas page by itself is like a 4.1. So it's very close to passing, but not quite passing. If we see yellow, which is the example in the screen, and the tool I'm using in this one, I like it because you can give it a hex value or a color. There's one that is, so this one is contrast-ratio.com. And yellow is just as bad as white on white. It's so terrible to see if you use font. Here it's obvious to see because the yellow is filling half of the screen. But when you use it for yellow font or yellow background and white font, or vice versa, it's really difficult to read. And there's an example for you on the screen. Blue is somewhere in the middle. That's the 7:1. And black on white is the extreme opposite. And from white on white, black on white is the highest ratio possible, is 21:1. So if you use that, you can play with those colors. If you are set on choosing a color palette for your course, and you want to, for example, to use that red, you can make it a darker red. And the W3C has a tool for choosing which shade of red contrast passes the 4.5:1. Like I said, the red is 4.1. So if you make it a little darker, it will pass. So maroon is in the 7 range. That's the color of the university, maroon and gold. Those do pass if you use those. Color is the only mean. This is an example where they're using color to signify due dates for assignments and things like that. This is how you fix it, by adding another text, adding what's due, what passed, and what is missed.
All right, tip number 7 is links, and I'm going to try and speed through this so we can wrap up on time and not hold you guys late. But links are things we see every day, right? This is the world we live in. The best way to use links in your Canvas site, and this actually applies to emails anytime you're working with it. Zoom is an exception because Zoom, you can't do embedded links yet. But the best practice is to embed those links. Don't just slap that URL in your Canvas page or in an email. We're all guilty of it. It's convenient, it's easy, but it's not accessible because a screen reader will read out that entire URL, and it is painful to listen to that. So we recommend, when you decide that you want to embed a link, to use a phrase, not single words, to indicate where you're going with that link. So don't use anything that says click here or link. Usually if you have something that says click here or link, the text immediately preceding those words is what you'd want to use as the embedded text instead. And so, like I said earlier, having consistent naming conventions for the link, if you're looking to the same document or article or website multiple times, use the same phrase for that link over and over and over again, because that way people don't have any confusion about where they're going. And we'll have a really exciting example of that on the next slide here. But then for Canvas in particular, if you're linking to files that you want students to download or to view, you should really add the extension type. So .pdf, .doc, whatever it is, .mp3. So that way students know that they're not being taken to another web page, that it might trigger a download, it might open up another tab in their browser. It just really helps them understand what's happening before they click on it. And it gives them a little bit more context. And so now for probably my favorite example we have in this entire presentation, we can see there are 3 links on this page that will exemplify why hyperlinks should be descriptive, so you know where you go before you click. The first link is the ID interview assignments page. The second list is common questions list. And then the third link is instructional designer interview questionnaire post. So these all seem like 3 distinct locations that you could go, 3 distinct assignments or assignments and pages, just sort of a mix of things. These all went to the same place in Canvas. And this is an actual example from a course I took in a master's program. So it was very confusing for all of us. We had a Q&A discussion forum, and this came up over and over and over again, asking like, are we missing things? Did the instructor link the wrong stuff because it's got different names? So this is sort of an in-context example of how this can go awry very quickly. So just make sure you're consistent and descriptive with your link text.
So the next one is tables. When you use tables, we prefer if you use it for data tables, not layout tables. Every table should have a every data in every cell should have a corresponding heading or heading column or heading row. So that data table could be, for example, a schedule. That's a data table. Could be an actual data tables with numbers and degrees for any type of scientific information. Or it could be, if you want to make it as contact information, make sure there's a row header on the top, name, address, phone number. That is also considered a data table. Don't merge cells and keep it simple. There is a video here in how to make your tables accessible in Canvas. Is very tedious. There is another easier tool in UDoIT for you to fix it, but we'll try to go through this one.
On this page, we have a sample table with 20 rows and 4 columns. If you run the Canvas accessibility checker, it will tell you that you have one of 2 issues. A caption is missing and there is no row header. From this accessibility checker, you can enter the caption in this edit field and then click apply, or you can do it the hard way by clicking on table and then table properties. Check the checkbox that says caption, then click OK, and then go to the top of the table. Right above the table, I'm going to type the words lecture and lab schedule, and that adds the caption to a table. Now we're going to address the second error, which is a row header. You select the entire row, you click on table, cell, and then cell properties, and you select header cell, close that window, and then because this is a big table, so we have to select the leftmost column. Do the same steps, table, cell, and then cell properties, and then make those cells header cells, and then close the window by clicking OK. Now if we run the accessibility checker, it will tell us that you have 23 errors. It's because the scope wasn't defined, and that was the second step that we should have done. So if we select the top row, cell properties, and then header cells are selected, but now we're going to add the scope to column. We're going to do the same thing on the leftmost column. But now we're going to do the scope to equal row. If we do the accessibility checker, now we have 0.
All right, so that was a way to make your tables accessible in Canvas. We have a better way of doing it that we'll talk about right at the very end here. Tip number 9 is media, though. So this is talking about any media, multimedia content you have in your course, videos, podcasts, any sort of audio component, audiovisual component. You really want to think about keeping this content under 10 minutes. Students are not going to watch beyond that. If you're recording an entire lecture, chunk it up into various sections. It's easier for students to find which part they need to return to again after they watched it the first time. And then we also highly recommend making these videos reusable. Do not put any indication of semester in there. Don't talk about particular assignment details within the videos unless it's a video about the assignment. Really try to keep it clean and purely about the content that's related to that particular topic, so you can use it over and over and over again, so you're not recreating the wheel every semester. While you're recording your videos, you want to make sure that you're describing what you're doing on the video. If you're sharing your slides, or if there's some sort of like video clip, talk about what's happening on that screen. So if someone isn't able to actually watch the video at that time or give it its full attention, make sure that you are telling them what's going on. So that way you're indicating what's important in that section as well. And then this is a non-negotiable. All videos must have captions or a transcript. This is where you hear about universities having liability lawsuits for not having, accessible videos, not having captions. So we need to have them on everything. And this means more than just using the automated captioning transcription services that like Zoom and YouTube and Kaltura have. You need to make sure that appropriate punctuation is used. Meaningful sound effects are captioned, and that if you have multiple speakers, you're identifying who is speaking at what time. And so we've got a caption guideline, z.umn.edu/caption-guidelines. Feel free to check that out for more information. And then there are several options for captioning. You can use YouTube. Our recommendation is to use Kaltura. I'm going to gloss over the other two because we have 3 minutes left, but Kaltura is really great. It has great auto captions. I find it to be the easiest interface to edit captions, and we've got a lot of really great resources at the U about how to do that. And it also has captions for foreign languages, which I think is something that's really great. I used that for Spanish recently, and it worked out pretty well. So now on to tip 10.
Yep, and with this one is it's about document best practices. Share the original source of the document, whether even in Google Doc and view only, or Word document is the best way to do it. If you're going to use PDFs, try to minimize your PDFs. We know we did a pilot recently, and we found that a lot of those PDFs could be Canvas pages or actual documents for students. If it's reading material, work with a library course reserve and they'll help you run OCR on it. OCR is optical character recognition, so it makes it more readable for assistive technology. But OCR is an automated tool, so it can be great for English content, but terrible for scientific content. So try to work with a library course reserve, reach out to the libraries. They have a process of how you can request reading material, and they convert it to PDF for you and make it as accessible as they could. We do have a bonus step, but and that's about You Do It. You can watch it on your own.
Instructors will
So we'll give you the links to the slides. You Do It is available to all instructors at the university. It's in every Canvas course. Feel free to run it. We'd love it if you can tell us about one thing you're willing to commit to change. We want you to start small, start now. Start with one thing. You don't have to do all of it all at once in your course. So please refer to the slide deck and the handout notes for any other anything you missed or you want to revisit, and we'd be happy to answer a few questions in the last couple of minutes you have.
I also want to plug, if you watch that You Do It video and you are intrigued, that we are doing a You Do It webinar next week, Thursday. Or the lunch hour, it's right after lunch, I think, right? Like 1 to 2. So we would love to see you there if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise, we are happy to consult anytime as well.